Let's talk elections.
Transmitter 42.
The presidential elections are upon us, and it's time for one last discussion on the campaigns as the energy dies down and the last moments of voting become history. My guests join me to share their political roots with observations of how things have changed over the decades. We consider the end of the 2024 campaign season, discuss how the approaches of each major party differ, and respond to interviews of the Pennsylvania electorate and other commentators. Join me and my guests on Transmitter 42. Welcome back to the audience. This is John Huggins from Transformer 42. We have our guests, Kimberly Huggins and Sean Cooper. We're going to talk about the election. We also have an audience member, Amanda. So, here we are on the eve of the election. This will air tomorrow after the election. So, where do you think we sit, Sean?
Well, when you say we, are you meaning Republicans or Democrats?
Well, both, because we have a House and a Senate to consider as well. But obviously the main factor is the presidential election, the one that's the most fun.
The main horse race.
I always get excited around election time because although I wasn't in the military, my grandfather and my dad were both in the Navy. So we always tell our kids that a lot of people sacrificed a lot, gave a lot to give you that right to vote, so you better use it.
True. I always tell my kids that, as frustrated as I get sometimes, that the one reason I do continue to vote is because I know somebody died, literally, so I had the right to do that. So that is definitely important.
My history is I grew up in a Democrat family, and my dad was in World War II, and I listened to him quite a bit. And they were literally Depression folks. They grew up in that as kids. And to them, FDR, of course, was the savior of all things.
God.
Yeah. And my grandparents were, of course, Democrats. And I think my granddaddy said once that he would vote for a snake before he voted for a Republican.
Well, some people might still feel that way, but I actually grew up in a house that wasn't very political at all. My grandfather was in the military, and he didn't much like Republicans either. But my actual immediate family didn't really care. Didn't really have a lot to say about anything.
So a little background on me. I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania originally. I have, on my mother's side, we have Hungarian and English roots. My grandmother actually came over to Ellis Island when she was 3, so I'm second generation on her side. And then my dad's family was English and Irish. I know my great-grandmother on my dad's side came over from Ireland as a young child. So being in Pittsburgh, for those who don't know, it's a lot of immigrants gathered there around the turn of the century with the steel mills and the coal mines. And Mount Washington, which is, for those that know Pittsburgh, is up on the hill that used to be called Coal Hill because they would send the coal down to the steel mines for them to use in the steel mills for them to use in the steel mills. So almost everybody I ever grew up with was either a first generation, second generation immigrant. We had the different communities where they all gathered. The Irish were here, the Hungarians were here. We had a place called Polish Hill, where all the ethnicities would gather together and share their food and their experiences coming over, which helped make the city pretty strong at one point.
Yeah. Would you say all those people then had jobs either in the steel mill, the coal mine,
Yeah, I mean there's some in the food industry, but for the most part it was either steel mill or it was a career that was adjacent or benefited from the steel mills.
And we can sum up Sean with his shirt as well. He says, "You can't scare me. I have 2 daughters."
That will make you strong if you have 2. I don't think you even need 2. One would probably suffice. But as John was saying, a lot of my relatives too grew up Democrats. I really didn't follow politics as a young kid. I was more worried about just playing. But I would imagine that probably 90% of the people that I knew or grew up with that lived in our neighborhood, because they were newly immigrated to America, that they were Franklin Roosevelt Democrats, John Kennedy Democrats, right. And the parties makeup, both the parties' makeup was a little different back then than it is today, I think.
Yeah. So I think that fast forward to today, I think you make an excellent point that it's not your granddaddy's party anymore. Yeah. I think probably.
Yeah, I would say all my relatives, which hail from North and South Carolina, they would probably be aghast at the fact that someone would be challenging them on gun control. The Democrats of old certainly never did that.
Yeah.
I feel like there was probably a lot of policy changes. I mean, I'm not the first person who's said, I don't really think John F. Kennedy would be welcome in today's Democrat Party. I don't really see him fitting in that now.
So the Republicans of today, well, let's go back 16 years, say. Reagan, of course, was an exception, but they have had their stuffiness as well. And I would argue that they're bought by special interests. They all are to a degree, but they don't seem to pay a whole lot of attention to individual rights as much as some others do. The libertarians, of course, have been sort of the voice of that in a way, as the minority that they are, but they're out there.
Well, I think there's factions within each party. I mean, I know they present as just one or the other, but I think within each party there is like a struggle within each party. So like I would argue that on the Democrat side right now, they've really been dragged almost forcefully to the extreme left of, or what you may have considered extreme left based on what you, like if you compare it to what the party of John F. Kennedy was, it's to the left of that now. Is everybody in the Democrat Party like that? No, I don't think so. But it's like whose voice wins out.
Years ago, I saw an election for some local office, and it was a Democrat that was running for maybe sheriff or something like that. And he says, "I'm a pro-gun Democrat." And I was like, he won't be lasting long, I don't think. I don't know what happened. We're talking county level kind of thing, so who knows what actually became of him. So we seem to have the makings of a unity party of a kind, uniquely more so this year than when Trump first ran the first 2 times. In fact, I think Trump was more of a phenomena before. Now it seems to be much different energy. I'm sensing a whole coalition here of a variety of people. There's an ad that they just put out that I'll play eventually, which really wraps it up nice. They have done a pretty good job of doing social media this time around.
Well, I think they were in a different campaign this time than even last time.
And a better job getting out trying to get out the early vote, which Donald Trump kind of did not want 4 years ago.
Yes.
True.
Yes.
Well, I mean, I don't know how you feel, but in a perfect world, I mean, my perfect world would be one day everybody gets a day off, paper ballots. I mean, I'm not saying like military can't vote and all that, but I think like mail-in ballots, absentee ballots, all that stuff should be like strictly curtailed.
I think the majority of Americans like voting day and not voting season.
You're right. I agreed.
It's almost feels like it doesn't end. And regardless of how many studies they do, I mean, it's just common sense that the longer the election lasts and the more mail-in ballots you have and the more computers you use, and this goes for either side, it's a lot easier to compromise the election.
Truth, for sure.
Paper ballots make it easier on the election workers too. I have firsthand knowledge of that when I helped out with the Warrenton Presbyterian Church, the precinct that was there. We had ballots, and we also had 2 machines, so that was the choices. And they only allocated 2 machines to that precinct. And a lot of people seem to always naturally gravitate towards the machines, thinking that they're faster. And I thought that as well until I watched this unfold. For one thing, the paper ballots, everyone, if you want one, you get one. Then, of course, they have these cardboard booths, which can be replicated in the dozens. So you have all of this people doing their ballots at once, and then they feed the machine at the end to tally it up and dump it in the bucket. And that was blazing fast compared to the 2 machines, especially if you've got constitutional amendments or something like that really slow everything down. And especially when you get some poor old person who really should be doing a paper ballot.
Right.
They get up there and they get stuck.
You don't get a choice. You get the paper ballot.
I'm also old enough to remember Ferris Bueller hacking his school's computer to change his grades. And I think there's more sophisticated hackers out there now.
Truth.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of talk about internet attacks on voting systems. I know that the system that we had here in our county is not attached to any network. It's all internalized. And
yeah, but so to that point, I think it's only as good as the state wants it to be. If you want to have an opportunity, which actually leads to another conversation. Like, do you want the state, like if it's a federal election, should there be a rule like it should be the same for every state?
I would argue no, only because it's up to the states to do election. There is no such thing as a federal election. There are states who elect the federal officers, their own representatives. Right down to the president, we elect electors.
Well,
right?
That's true, but
and
I don't know.
Every state has their way of doing things. Some of them are designed, I think, for potentially morphing the results. Others are just designed to accommodate whatever the geography that they have.
Yeah, but to Coop's point, if you can, what was the recent hack we had where like everything went to a standstill? What was that over? I can't even remember. But my point is, if it can do that, it can hack a voter machine. I mean, come on, it can't be that hard.
If you have access to it, I believe it was access. That was the question. Someone managed to get access like this computer here. If it had no internet connection, they could plug in a thumb drive and do something with it.
Yes.
I believe they rooted it, which is the term of how do you get into a Linux prompt or something like that, which is essentially hacking and getting in through the back door and changing whatever you want if you know where to go.
Well, I still come back to I can't believe we had to go to court to say that ballots with the date past the 5th won't be counted. I mean, it just seems like common sense.
And also,
but
people
not.
admitting that they can't vote being taken off the voter rolls.
That's a problem.
That's a problem also. So those are they want to know what feeds into election mistrust, and it's things like that,
totally.
that add up.
Yeah.
Yeah, even if they're not being conniving about it, they sure make themselves look like it. So it's not optics control.
Well, to your point of optics, there was a lot of bad optics in this whole election.
Yes. So
a lot of people.
Again, October surprises would be a topic on its own. You expect a 1 or 2 or 3. What did we get? Like 5 or something? And every time the Democrats did something, Trump would respond.
Whether you liked it or not, he had a response. I mean,
and completely blow it out of the news cycle, whatever they were trying to convey. I mean, RFK Jr. did it after the convention. Trump did it with a McDonald's. Trump did it with a garbage truck. I'm just going, man.
I mean, the other thing that has me really nervous about this election is when you have one of the candidates that say he's going to bring somebody in to study government efficiency,
There isn't any.
and that person is also not by everybody on the Democratic side, but he's been. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that he's a fascist. I've heard the word Hitler a lot too many times. I'm not Jewish myself, but I think it's disrespectful to people of the Jewish faith who had 6 million members of their faith killed to compare that to a presidential candidate.
Right.
So I mean that just feeds into all the rhetoric, and Trump has his rhetoric too. I just think, when you call somebody Hitler, that what would you not do to make sure that person does not get elected?
Right.
Isn't it it's your moral obligation to make sure that person doesn't get elected? That's what scares me.
Well, and I think, to your point, I mean, I think that's the point. I mean, there was an article, we had a joke in our family. There was an article written where the guy literally said Trump was Hitler, Stalin, and Mussolini all together. And so I said, well, let's
the hat trick of totalitarianism, huh?
And I'm like, so let's just add Thanos, because that's the last.
When I hear people say that, I always like to say, I also heard that he eats babies.
I mean, what else are you going to say?
Yeah, I heard that too. They would probably say, yeah.
But I don't know. I think it is sad, because it's like, I want to go back to like when we were kids, where it like, if you were a Democrat and you were a Republican, it didn't really, no one cared. You voted however you voted, and then you went on with your life. And you didn't have to hear about politics for 4 years every day till the next election. You did get a time period there where you didn't have to hear about it.
And I think back then, I mean, the debates and the talk was more of fiscal responsibility, getting the budget down. I mean, now we're having debates on whether boys should be in girls' bathrooms, girls should be in boys' bathrooms. Should we not have a border at all, and everybody come one, come all? I mean,
that this is the actual topics is a very sad statement in and of itself. It's like, okay, where did the Democrats go?
Yeah, stuff everybody used to agree on is out the door.
Right. I don't know when that happened, but.
So I believe that extreme nonsense has triggered a variety of people who would remain otherwise very quiet. They don't even vote. More and more people are coming out to vote that I'm seeing. And because you're from Pennsylvania, I have a variety of interesting clips from the Amish community up there, because apparently they are becoming far more involved.
Yeah.
Let's listen to the first clip.
We're looking forward to bringing out a lot of Amish folk on November 5th, or even earlier, to vote in person in droves this year.
That was an organizer, and this is an interview of an Amish young man who's actually wearing a T-shirt in the video.
So the Amish historically, deep rooted in their ancestry, is the government, the state killed their people in the 1500s over in Europe, Switzerland primarily. So when they immigrated to America, they brought with them this distrust of the state. And so that's part of the resistance to getting involved in civics, like elections and so forth. There's also this non-resistance pacifism woven in there as well. And so when you see the Amish community starting to get engaged in civics like voting, something as simple as voting, it means that the country has turned to a point, or the culture has pushed far enough left that they're like becoming engaged, because first of all, they care more about their community than their country. It sounds crazy, but they do, because they are Americans, but they also care about their community. So if they feel like their rights to, gathering as a community, as a church, if they see that potentially becoming violated, you will see some folks rise up and be willing to engage in voting.
So their community has seen this before, and now their hackles are up, saying, we have totalitarianism knocking on our door once again.
Which to me is just big government. And to me, if you watch what's going on, I'd say the last 3 or 4 years, especially since COVID, if you control the language, you control the narrative. So, you could say reproductive freedom. I mean, to me, it's abortion. The words are always changing. Misinformation, disinformation. Well, what one person's disinformation is somebody else's truth. And if you have the government making those decisions,
and who gets to decide? Like to your point, why should anybody get to decide? Really?
It's interesting to me that the Supreme Court decision not too long ago about the government no longer has deference in the final say, so to speak, on various topics that they administrate. Chevron. Yep, the Chevron deference case. And that's actually very good news, because now they'll actually have to defend themselves with more vigor than just simply being able to say what they think some situation is, whatever it might be the government's doing.
I would be interested to see how much the Amish community has been engaged, because there have been a couple of high-profile cases where they had farm products literally destroyed. Like, the government came in and, threw all their stuff in the street, the ground, whatever, and broke all their stuff. Perfectly good food. I mean, if for whatever reason they don't, I don't know, raw milk or whatever, they didn't like it. So, and I think that probably has a lot to do with it.
And it's not funny, but it's always one way. It's, oh, we didn't cover this story. We thought it wasn't true. We thought it was Russian disinformation. It always works one way.
Right.
It's not a two-way street. So that's what makes you wonder. And I've told Amanda this before. It's almost to me like every Democratic nowadays, I'm not saying 20, 30 years ago, but nowadays every Democratic event, campaign, it's like it's spit shine for Hollywood. It's not real. It's like it's done on a soundstage. You can't talk to the candidate. They can't give any answers. They're going to give you the same platitudes.
Right.
They're hidden. They're only going to talk to certain people. To me, if you want the greatest job in this country, you got to answer some questions.
Truth. But to your point, that's interesting what you said. I was telling somebody the other day that I feel like we are literally living in the fakest time ever. Everything. I mean, I don't know if that's because we have social media now, which we didn't necessarily have, It's not even 10 years ago like it is now. And you just feel like, is everything contrived? I mean, to your point, here we are just a few days before the election, and Kamala is asked about something she did in California, and she literally said, I'm not going to get into that before the election.
We're too close to the election to let you know my opinion.
Right.
I mean, what world are we living in?
It's crazy.
I keep telling Kim that the campaign manager for Bill Clinton was James Carville. We all know him. You may not like him, but the boy's a genius, okay? And I've heard him a few times, like when Kamala was over in Hollywood, I think he said she's on the West Coast wasting time on a state that she's going to get regardless. She needs to be mixing it up. I guess it's around the time of Helene.
It was the hurricane. So that was hard. Talk about poor optics.
Oh, yeah, I think she had a fundraiser.
She was out in San Francisco at a Hollywood fundraiser.
And you need money. I get it. And she's not doing very well with that, apparently. But so, yeah, you got to have money. But you need to manage that a little more carefully.
That was just poor optics. People are, dying in a mudslide in Western North Carolina, and you're at a fundraiser. That was not smart. But
I can't remember if it was before we started or after, but I told you earlier I voted for Obama. I voted for Clinton's second term. And so I voted Republican and Democrat, even in congressional races. But after COVID in 2020, because I'm a sports guy, so when I lost my sports, I started watching politics. You can ask Amanda how much politics I watched before 2020. It was literally none. I just wasn't engaged. We had 4 kids. We always had something going on. But something in COVID struck that, and I started watching politics, and it was just amazing to me the things that are done right under the American people's noses that they don't realize.
On both sides.
Yes, on both sides. And I just feel like for the most part, and I've done a deep dive into this, not all, but more than the left. On the right consists of a lot of people who have built a business, who have been in the private sector, who's hired and fired people, who signed checks, and a lot on the Democratic side are career politicians that started at 20, started at 23, 24, and it's really all they're ever going to do unless they get hired as a DEI officer for a corporation. And then as an example of this, CAOC.
Truth. I mean, a lot of to your point.
She won't create anything in the private sector. It will be government subsidies to start this nonprofit and that nonprofit and that nonprofit
Right.
that don't solve any problems. Just give us the money.
Right. And I don't think she learned anything the year she was a bartender either. So
I wasn't going to bring that up. I was trying to be nice.
Let me do another clip from the Amish community. This is actually pretty important because Pennsylvania is so tight.
99%, if not 100%, vote very conservative.
What is it about the conservative values that the Amish identify with the most?
That's a good question. I would say limited government. They want to be left alone. We want to farm, grow our own food, and we want to sell it.
To your point.
That kind of thing. Too many regulations is I mean, it's antithetical to freedom. And so the Amish are a very freedom-loving people when it comes to commerce, farming, raising their families. They have their own schools. They fought for their own schools in the 60s and they won. Some of them went to prison because they didn't send their kids to public schools. That was a huge victory for us now because many families who are homeschooling do so because of the Amish resistance to sending their kids to public school. And now we see the decay of our moral fabric in our public schools are indoctrinating our kids.
Morals schmorals is the new Democratic mantra, perhaps.
Well, I think to his point of just want to be left alone, I think there's a lot of people, doesn't matter if you're Amish or not, but I think a lot of people just want to be left alone.
Just leave us be.
Okay? And so circling back to what you were saying now about just seems to be so much crazy out there. That's just like a bridge too far for a lot of people because you're just kind of like, I mean, if you run a business, I don't have any numbers, but I'm sure like the regulations that you have to follow are like so much more probably than they need to be, much less more than you want them to be. And it just seems to be, I think most people just want to be left alone and they don't want to be told necessarily by the government, but at the same time, you don't want, like, if you want to do whatever your lifestyle is, okay, fine, keep it in your bedroom, keep it in your house, but you can't make me accept it, and you can't make my child do X because you want the world to turn like you want it to turn.
Oh, but your children belong to us.
No, well, that's a whole nother thing. Do you feel like your children belong to the state? I mean...
How about let us raise the children so that...
That's a bridge too far for me.
I've met plenty of people who the state should take their children.
Yeah, how about just let us raise our children so they can be productive citizens for the betterment of the future economy?
Well, I know, to your point about COVID, now I got red pilled in a different way. I pretty much voted Republican my whole life, although I did vote third party. I voted for Perot back in the day,
Me
okay?
Too. 19% or so.
And I kind of feel like I know a lot of young people from talking to our oldest who he hates the two-party political system. I know a lot of people do for various reasons, but it's what we got. So you got to work with what you got now. And the reason I would never vote for a third-party candidate right now is because it can't work in our system. I mean, let's say they got enough and there wasn't 270 for any candidate and it goes to the House of Representatives. Okay, well, they're not voting for the third party. They're going to pick the Republican or the Democrat. So I hate to say anybody's wasting their vote if you vote third party. Okay, maybe you can make a statement, but I don't know, which was why it was so interesting with Kennedy in the mix this go around and then how all that played out. Because I personally think that could have gone down so differently if the Democrat Party had at least had a primary with him on the stage, like accepted him, but then they wouldn't have had the control.
And see, that's the other thing. Why do you have, I think it's the earliest, if not is one of the earliest presidential debates in presidential debate history.
Right.
Why do you agree to that?
Because they were trying to get rid of Biden. It's
Yes.
as simple as that.
That's what I believe.
I mean, yeah. I think most people who think about this stuff a little more than the people don't think about anything until tomorrow understood that's exactly what happened there.
So all the people that were around him
No.
did nothing, saw nothing, they said, and George Clooney puts an op-ed in the LA Times and all of a sudden it's time to get rid of Joe Biden. That's what it took.
Right. So what would have happened? What would have happened if Trump hadn't agreed to that debate? And if he'd have said, we have to wait till after you're chosen, we have to wait till after the Democrat convention
I thought about
to
that.
pick, for me to actually debate you, because then you're the candidate. And that their convention was super late this year, into August, I think. So you said you thought about it. What do you think?
No, I just think it was, as John said, I just think it was everything is political. I really believe when Nancy Pelosi wakes up in the morning, she decides what cereal she's going to eat by what's the most political brand. It's all political. Every move that's made just seems political. And that's just as an observer. I'm kind of like the clip that John played. They just keep the government, out of our lives. Our son is like your son. One of our sons played college athletics. He's in Pennsylvania at St. Vincent College right now. He's working very hard. And I'm sorry, I don't think that once he's 30 years old and he's sitting in a room for a job interview with somebody who doesn't have his credentials and didn't work as hard as he did, should get equity, should get
That job.
get that job based on equity. It's what you've done. I'm all for equality. I am not for equity because
Agreed.
you cannot have equal outcomes.
No.
It's not American.
It's not.
Let's continue with the Amish. They have great stuff.
And you guys, the small business owners, just want to be left alone.
Yeah.
And not regulated and told that they have to hire a certain number of people and do their business a certain way. And that all goes along with how the conservatives feel.
Very much so. I think that's one of the intersections between American conservatism and the Amish community. We want to be left alone. We want to raise our families. We want to send them to school. We want to take them to church. And we want to give them our values. And so, and
Values. So, yeah, the Amish definitely have, I guess, been red-pilled. There's more clips there that show they very much understand what's going on. And I often wonder if because they have no electricity, so they say, if they have a little crystal radio and they're listening to the AM station that has talk radio down the road, because that's literally what I'm hearing.
So
They're
for the most
they're
part,
in
I don't know
touch.
the statistics, but they sat out the 2020 election for the most part. Correct?
Right. I think they set
don't
out
know.
most elections.
I just know this one, apparently they're very much more involved.
Well, I heard.
Go ahead.
Now, I heard that there was 80,000 new registrants from the Amish community in Pennsylvania just for this election.
Yeah, the young guy was very happy that his parents got registered for the first time this time. And they don't like to go out to vote. They don't want to do that. So mail-in balloting was made for them. That's what they did. And that allowed them to do their votes and not have to be seen, not be pictured, and all that good stuff. They're very much, I guess, introverts is the way to put it.
Well, let's hope they don't get burned up somewhere.
Yeah, I understand that.
Well, if
point
it's
is-
bad news for somebody if the Amish are organized, because since we've been sitting here, they built 6 barns.
And moved 3, probably,
Right.
in their entirety.
Something that would take a year or longer to take place in the real world, because you got to get the permit and you got to get the EPA designation and all that.
I mean, in certain ways, when you're young, you think of the Amish, oh, that's boring. Once you're older and you have kids and stuff, you kind of admire that life. I mean, they're self-sufficient.
Mm-hmm.
Now, wouldn't be able to watch any Steeler games, which would be a big problem. I might have to sneak off and be Amish light and just participate Monday through Saturday.
You might, what is that? You get called something when you get sent away, you get shunned. That's what it is. You get shunned.
Yeah, I get shunned. They may have to just shun me.
Right.
Any predictions?
I'm gonna be. I thought you might ask this, and I'm gonna be bold. I think it's gonna be a Trump blowout. I think he's gonna get close to 300 electoral votes, and I think he's gonna win the popular vote too. By how much, I don't know, but I think he's gonna win the popular vote maybe 54-46, which would be, compared to the last few elections, pretty decisive.
That's a blowout in the electoral college concept.
I would really like for him to win the popular vote, because I'm so sick of hearing we have to get rid of the electoral college and just go by the popular vote. We only want to get rid of the electoral college when we lose, but if we were to lose the popular vote, then maybe you might think twice.
I think the electoral college is in trouble. I think
I hope not, because it
I think the
definitely.
filibuster, and I think the Supreme Court have justices added. Now, hopefully, with the Senate and House the way they are, because most likely Republicans will retain the Senate. The House is kind of for grabs, but even the House looks like they may even have at best an 8 to 10 seat majority.
Well, they only got 5 right now, so I mean, I expect that to be tight.
So, Unity Party. Do you agree that that's happening right now? Strange bedfellows are in the Republican Party. I would never have seen this, but I'm seeing it with RFK, with Tulsi Gabbard. There's a few other names that
Vivek
we're going to hear.
Ramaswamy.
Vivek, although he's a Republican from the get-go, I think.
Yeah,
but
he's different.
that ad that we're going to play near the end here, it's just perfect. And then, of course, there is libertarian component. There's a personality that I listen to a lot who's an ex-Satanist, of all things.
What is his name?
His name is Tarl something.
Carl.
That's his first name, but his handle is Sticks Hexenhammer 666. But the boy is very bright, and I wanted to play for you some of his summary on predictions.
Okay.
I'm seeing more energy among Trump fans. I'm seeing more organizational capacity, except maybe on the ground in the craftivistic sense. The liberals tend to outperform there. But when I look at the early voting especially, early voting in person, I see 2 possible explanations, technically 3, for the situation. The Republicans are outperforming where they have in the past by a double-digit margin. I can assume that this is all people that would have voted on Election Day anyway, but they decided to early vote because Trump told them it was a good idea. Or I can assume that most of these people would not have voted and decided to vote early, or I can assume that there's some mixture of the two. I choose the third path. I think that some of these people would have voted anyway, but I think some of them wouldn't, because their schedule may not allow them to go out on election. It's not a national holiday. So some hundreds of thousands of those people, I think, would not have voted at all were it not for the admonishment, hey, you can vote for like the next couple of weeks, just do it now and get it over with, and then on election day, you don't have any problems. Some of those people, since they early voted, have died. Well, normally they would vote Democrat, but they already put in their votes, so the Democrats will lose some tens of thousands of votes probably in the competitive states simply because people early voted.
That's good.
Yeah, he's with it, we'll say. We don't agree with him certainly on certain moral issues, but the boy is very dug in, and he's pro-Trump all the way.
Yeah, I always say I will. At this point in my life, I'm 51. I don't believe I will ever cast another vote for a Democrat unless the party changes and comes back toward the center a little bit. I make that caveat of saying I will never vote Democrat again until after I die.
That's right. Right. That's right. Like you, he predicts that the Senate will go red. Don't really know about the House, and that Trump wins.
Well, I want to get back to your unity party
Sure.
concept. I'm not so optimistic. I think this is a specific moment in time that people have come together for different reasons.
Totally agree.
I think there's every possibility if Trump wins 4 years from now, that's going to be blowed all to kingdom come. If somebody doesn't get there, whatever they were promised or whatever they thought they were going to get. I mean, I hope a lot of those things come to fruition, but realistically.
But I think the parties moved more towards like a Tulsi Gabbard, or it's just to me, it's just common sense. If you believe in common sense, then come under this tent. If you don't want boys showering with your girls, if you don't want an open border, because as far as I'm concerned, if you don't have a border, you don't have a country.
Agreed.
I have a daughter that's in college in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and I think quite often that something could happen to her, and at that point my life would just about be over. So that's a thought that crosses my mind. It affects how I vote.
I just think it will be interesting. I mean, we're getting ahead of ourselves here. We're only supposed to be talking about now, but
now in the future.
I think 4 years from now, I do think going back to how Trump ran a different campaign this time, which he totally did, he has totally succeeded in, if you were believing the concept of making a bigger tent. He totally did that this time with bringing all kinds of different people in.
And some people had to go. I don't think Mitt Romney has a place in the Republican Party going forward.
But what I will be interested to see in the future is at some point what I would call the establishment of the Republican Party. People like Romney and McConnell and whoever else. Those are the big ones I think of. There's going to be a pushback.
Because they don't like outsiders either.
No, they don't. They're just waiting till Trump's done, and then they're expecting to come back.
And then the red wave will be done. That's unfortunately what's probably going to happen. So we just need to enjoy that when we can. Now, whoever wins this election has a very big problem with the economy like it is on the precipice of going into the tank.
It's still going to suck.
Yeah. And the debt the way it is, crazy high.
I mean, not only government debt, credit card debt. American credit card debt's at an all-time high.
Right.
And
so you can cite the job numbers, the unemployment numbers, and everything, but you can't tell people what they're feeling. You can tell people eggs cost $6, chicken costs double what it was, because people just look at you like you don't know what you're talking about.
Right. So when you say,
they insult you and say you're not seeing that.
When they tell you the economy's getting better, like to your point, I was just watching before you came in. I was watching the pundit, whatever, on the news, and he's like, well, energy's still high and groceries are still high and housing's still high, but the economy's getting better. I mean, those are all the things that like real people.
That's right. Stare at my watch swinging before your eyes.
I mean, the grocery thing I think is so easy to fix because I think a lot of it's based on fossil fuels.
It's all energy.
Okay, so if you got to pay more for diesel to get the lettuce from where it's going to the the
Grocery
ships,
store,
ports, everything, and the producers aren't going to absorb that cost. They're going to pass it down to the consumers. So if you make energy more affordable, the prices will go down. Now the tariff deal, I'm not sure.
She thinks they're going to continue to gouge, but eventually competition would bring it down. Now
Well,
that's Kamala's.
Now,
that's
as far as
Kamala's
the inflation that we have, because inflation's cumulative, you're not going to get 2020 prices anymore. But maybe they can just start, stop outpacing wages would be nice.
Well,
Or
that
at
would
least
be
stop
nice.
the inflation. How
But
about that?
But
Got it right, Amanda?
the problem, the other problem is the government, the powers that be, want it to take care of the debt. So, I don't know. And then to your point, I mean, when Reagan came in office, it took him every bit of 8 years. I mean, I don't really remember it because I was a kid, but just from looking at history, it didn't get better like a year after he got elected. It took the whole time.
Yeah, and even Reagan made some mistakes. I think he was a good president, but he made a lot of mistakes too.
Agreed.
So it goes for both sides. I
He
just
turned
vote
California blue.
I try to vote for the sides that make the least mistakes. And the other reason the border issue is a big issue for me because if Texas turns blue, we'll never get another Republican president.
That's true.
Kim has said that many times.
I'm on record as saying that 5 or 6 years ago.
But I think, all you have to do is look at the numbers. The border situation's the worst it's ever been. And
Oh, but you're not seeing that, Kim.
yeah, well, this is the thing. Whatever is happening is what they want to happen. So there's a reason for that. It's not just because
It's
we
not
don't.
it's not incompetence. I can say that.
It's not because we don't know how to close it.
And I'm not trying to personally disparage anybody, but if Alejandro Mayorkas doesn't look like a Bond villain, I don't know who does.
He's on the payroll inspector.
The WEF.
Right.
They finally got a legitimate name.
Right.
So
Oh, you said predictions. You say
Yeah.
Trump.
I think Trump's going to pull it out. Barely. I think it'll be a popular vote win. But the energy is certainly there. If it's not, I don't know, man. We're in for a terrible, terrible Christmas season, I think.
Well, to your point, I do think there's going to be, let's say Trump wins. I think there's going to be a severe mental health break moment in this country.
Board up the storefronts.
That's correct. Yeah, they will riot was one of my Sticks topics here. And, they're going to go out and they're going to bust things up and look like they're doing the righteous thing. Well, Amanda, what's your predictions?
She's out. What's your prediction?
Trump.
You think Trump?
I think popular and electoral college, but not the margin that you think. I think it's going to be.
What was yours? You
I
said
say Trump. I'm not going to lie. I'm worried about the cheat. It's so close. If it wasn't close, in the states he's got to win for the electoral college. I might want, but if it's close enough, he can cheat that much. You know what I mean?
Defeat the cheat is the mantra.
too big to rig.
I don't know.
I just, and if it's not a transparent election and people on both sides are going to start complaining, I just hope that it's a transparent election and that everything goes smoothly. And if Kamala Harris wins fair and square, then she wins fair and square. If Donald Trump wins, Donald Trump wins. Of course, I'd rather have Donald Trump, but I'm not going to go break into Sephora and start stealing stuff on Wednesday. I got other things to do.
Not even Sephora?
No. Maybe an Apple store.
That's a little higher value.
I'm not good for looting. I'm not as fast as I used to be.
To your point, that's good. That's the phone.
See, they're already trying to cancel us.
Yeah, maybe. We're putting out misinformation.
2 more clips. This is James Carville, who we all know is smarter than he puts himself out to be. He has been interviewed, of course, lately, and this is his prediction.
I would say take Harris over 270 electoral votes. Let these fools in these crypto markets do something. Let them drive the betting line into a favorable place and then take advantage of it. That's what I would do. I think she's going to win. She's got more money, got more energy, has a more united party, has better surrogates, and he's stone-ass nuts. Okay, when you start talking about lining up a political opponent with 9 people in a firing squad, and then you have the Washington Post and the Los Angeles Times says, "Ooh, I don't want to get involved in this. This is dirty politics."
Tell us how you really feel, James.
Yeah, spread that lie. That constant lie that's been debunked plenty of times.
Russiagate, the Fine People hoax, and now we have the firing squad hoax.
Totally. I mean, what is he going to say? He's at the end of the election. He's a paid political person. He's not going to say Harris is going to lose.
And he's making the tours, I think, too, because they just had I haven't seen it. They just had a film come out about him. And I think politically, I think he's brilliant. He's probably 20 years past his prime and probably not in the actual loop of everything.
Agreed.
But he's brilliant.
I'm sure the Democrats are paying him to go on there, and
perhaps
Harris is going to win.
But somebody else clearly is in charge of the campaign, because that is not the Harris campaign at the moment is not a Carville campaign, period.
Well, we were talking about that earlier, and it's very obvious that, to your point about what you were saying about DEI, so are the people running the Harris campaign, are they people who are really good at running a campaign, or did they get that job because they checked the right box? I would argue that they haven't run a great campaign at all. But if she loses, there's going to be, the spin is going to be, we're all racist, sexist, whatever.
We can just blame George Clooney.
Haters, oh, America just wasn't ready for the first woman president.
I said the exact same thing to her last night. I said, we're going to hear, America's not ready for a female president. Right. We just have too many racists in this country.
Well, when it's really, we're just not ready for Kamala, and we certainly weren't ready for Hillary.
Tell you what, let's play this last ad and talk about it. It's the party of racism.
What will we do with this moment? How will we be remembered? Look at the opportunities before us.
This election really isn't about the left versus the right. It's about we the people choosing our government and the choice between freedom versus tyranny.
Nobody has a chronic disease burden like we have. Why are we allowing this to happen to our children? Ultimately, the only thing that will save our country is if we choose to love our kids more than we hate each other.
What is going on here is deeper than politics. It is deeply spiritual. We are being called to rise above the hatred and the fear and the evil.
We need to remember above and beyond that we must love our neighbors, that we must treat other people as we hope to be treated.
You want to be a rebel? You want to be a hippie? You want to stick it to the man? Show up on your college campus and try calling yourself a conservative.
America is going to reach heights that it has never seen before. The future is going to be amazing!
healthy children. Don't you want a president that's going to make America healthy again?
I come to you today as a former Democrat. I will be a first-time Trump voter tonight.
I'm sure there's plenty of those, I think.
First and last. I mean, I think people will come out and vote for this election, and they probably won't vote again or anytime soon.
That's America.
The people dreamed this country, and it's the people who are making America great again.
And see that to me is just a great ad. I mean, it gives me goosebumps to hear it. And you know, the Republicans have now become the rebels.
Yes.
Agreed.
I mean,
but
there's certain, and I have a very, you know, I'm not shy. I'm not a shy person, and there's certain settings that I'm in that I will not let anyone know that I'm going to vote for Trump just because there's so many feelings. I deal in facts. So many people deal in feelings that I just can't deal with it.
And we saw plenty of that in COVID era. Feelings.
Well, I feel this, I feel that. Well, listen, I might feel like it's going to rain outside. That don't mean I'm right. Right.
And to your point, I mean, you can't run a society like that. I mean, you can't decide whether you're going to invade a country or not based on how you feel. I mean, you've got to have some, I don't know.
And I saw this yesterday, even in where was it? It was Michigan, because they have a large Arab population.
Mm-hmm.
It might have been Michigan and Wisconsin. In one state, the the Harris-Walz campaign was running pro-Palestinian, and then the other state, they're running pro-Israeli ads.
CNN covered that, actually.
Yeah, they did.
I mean,
I guess they can only go so far in their hypocrisy.
Don't play, you know, I have no respect if you play both sides of the fence. Take a stand and say what you believe. You either win or you'll lose.
Right. I don't know. It's complicated.
So I have my, we were talking about the potential for chaos. So my financial advisor had the election chaos trade, which I went ahead and set up today. It's basically, if things go wild, up or down, it makes money. If things are stable, it doesn't. I'm betting on instability. Either way. What do you think, Amanda?
That's probably a smart bet.
I agree. Well, I don't know. I think it's always interesting to see, talking about polls. I mean, you can find a poll to support anything.
Yeah, I don't trust polls.
But I do think it's interesting to go and look at the betting markets because that's real money, you know?
That's where you get your accurate. I'm not a degenerate gambler. Let me just preface by saying that. But I do gamble. And if Vegas says something's probable, I'd go with that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Sean. Thank you, Kimberly. Thank you, Amanda, for the cheerleading to the side. Thanks for listening, everyone. This is John. I hope you enjoyed this show. It's our hope that the election season will pass by peacefully and allow everyone to have an enjoyable holiday season. We'll catch you next week. Thanks for listening to the Transmitter 42 podcast. If you would like to send us feedback or suggestions, please email us at radioshow@t42.am or send a note via U.S. mail to Transmitter 42 LLC, P.O. Box 100, Remington, Virginia 22734.
Transmitter 42.